Chevy driver Corey LaJoie says there is no chance Kyle Busch races for Joe Gibbs Racing next season and suggests a second mystery Chevy team may have entered the Busch sweepstakes. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. It's another Kyle Busch episode. I realize that some of y'all may be getting tired of this Kyle Busch conversation, and you're not alone. Unfortunately, every week it seems there are new, well-founded either rumors or reports that emerge. And because this is a NASCAR news show and Kyle Busch is like the biggest free agent in recent memory, we have to talk about them. Believe me, I'm running out of things to say at this point. Like, there's no clear front runner, and that's kind of what I want to talk about today. Like, all year long, I think everyone kind of assumed Joe Gibbs Racing was the front runner. Like, you know, both sides want to get a deal done. Hopefully they can make the dollars and cents work. It'll happen eventually, right? And then like a month or so ago, the tune suddenly shifted. Suddenly Joe Gibbs Racing did not sound as confident. Kyle Busch was once again sounding a little ornery. Teams like Stewart-Haas Racing are frequently brought up. 2311 is frequently brought up. Now Chevy teams like Colleague, Trackhouse. Some people are even suggesting Dale Earnhardt Jr. could come to the Cup Series and bring Kyle Busch with them. There's no clear frontrunner at this point, in my opinion. Everyone's kind of just waiting to see what happens. What we can talk about now, though, are which teams have already submitted offers for Busch or are planning to make an offer to Kyle Busch. What options does Kyle Busch have? We can talk about, oh, Junior Motorsports is an option, but is it actually realistically an option? Those are two different conversations. We can talk about that, and that's kind of what we're going to be talking about in this video. We've got a clip from Corey LaJoie's latest episode of Stacking Pennies, his podcast. But real quick, before I play that clip and react to it, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch's older brother. It's, let's see, about 1:30 in the afternoon Central Time here on a Thursday, and as of right now, Kurt Busch has still not confirmed whether he will or will not race this weekend at Watkins Glen. So if he announces something while I'm editing this video, I'll put it in right here. But for now, no official word. Have no idea if Kurt will race at Watkins Glen. If he's been cleared to race, that could certainly play a role in these silly season rumblings when we talk about that 45 car and 2311 Racing and Toyota. But for now, we don't know the latest around Kurt Busch and his health situation, so we'll just leave that at that for the time being. Focusing on Kyle Busch, Corey LaJoie on Stacking Pennies said this earlier this week when discussing Busch's contract situation.
Kyle Busch isn't driving the 18 car next year. It's not happening. It's not happening. I hate it for the Kyle Busch fans. He will find a job somewhere. Hearing some rumors, there are certainly offers on the table. Some Chevy, potential Chevy team, two potential Chevy teams, a potential Ford team, and there's also an option potentially with Toyota. But I think we're going to see our little buddy in the 18, guys. That's just what it is.
That little buddy he refers to at the end there is Ty Gibbs. Corey LaJoie expects Gibbs in that 18 car next season. He says it's not happening. Kyle Busch will not drive for Joe Gibbs next year and throws out a few rumored possibilities. So last week, maybe the week before, was the first we'd heard that any Chevy team had entered the conversation. That was a rumor on Door Bumper Clear, a different podcast. Corey LaJoie, just a week later, throwing out that a second Chevy team has entered the conversation. So again, I don't think there's any team right now that's the clear front runner, but not every team I think is quite as realistic of an option as the next. So that's what I want to talk about in this video. I'm going to look at many of the top teams and I'm going to rate on a scale of 1 to 10 just how likely their chances are of signing Kyle Busch. Again, this is just in my opinion. Let's start with Joe Gibbs Racing. Corey LaJoie seems to believe there is a 0% chance Kyle Busch stays in the 18 next season. I'm going to hedge my bets. I'm going to go with a 4 out of 10. I don't think they're nearly as likely to land Kyle Busch as they were 3, 4, 5 months ago when they were working on that massive Oracle deal that eventually fell apart. On Monday, we reacted to this clip from David Wilson of Toyota, who just sounded, I don't know, he didn't sound hopeless, but he sounded very dejected, not very confident.
We are trying every avenue that we have to keep him in a Toyota. It's been a bizarre and challenging problem
I'm going to give them a 4 out of 10. Look, the only way they sign Kyle Busch is if a major sponsor just falls into their lap at the 11th hour, which I think is extremely unlikely, or Kyle Busch does ultimately agree to whatever their terms are. Busch admitted a few weeks ago that he's willing to race for less money than he was originally hoping for. Now, how does his KBM truck team factor into this? Is the price Busch is willing to race for still too high for Joe Gibbs Racing to afford out of pocket? Busch doesn't have a lot of leverage considering Ty Gibbs has looked very promising in his handful of first Cup Series starts. I think it's unlikely Busch returns to JGR, but I'm not going to go as low as Corey LaJoie just yet. I'll go with a 4 out of 10. Next up, Stewart-Haas Racing. There's some interesting a bit of news coming out of SHR. Greg Zipadelli spoke to the media earlier this week and said that the plan is to keep Cole Custer in the 41. Here's a direct quote tweeted by reporter Kelly Crandall. Greg Zipadelli on Cole Custer staying with Stewart-Haas Racing next season. Quote, right now, I believe that's what our plan is. Yes, we're just looking and trying to sort out the 10 car at this particular time. To me, that sounds like Custer is likely to stay in the 41. It's not a guarantee, but probably the most likely scenario. Eric Almirola's future is still unclear. He announced his retirement in January, but then recent rumblings have made it sound like he's reconsidering. Perhaps Smithfield has sweetened the deal. SHR maybe has sweetened the deal. They want to keep that team together. But if Almirola does retire, that could open up a spot for Kyle Busch, potentially. I'm going to give SHR a 6 out of 10 as far as how likely they are to get Kyle Busch. I think they're slightly favored over Joe Gibbs Racing at this point. To me, the only way Busch ends up at SHR is if A, and this is maybe the less likely scenario, Smithfield agrees to stay with the team in a significant role even though Almirola's left. I think if Almirola does in fact retire, I don't think we'll see a lot of Smithfield branding next year. That's just my take. But even if they don't stick around, they could still perhaps afford Kyle Busch at his reduced rate. Gene Haas certainly has deep pockets. He's basically funding most of that 41 car out of his company's pocket. Could he afford to do the same with the 10? Maybe bring in like Mobil 1 for a few races, maybe Busch Beer for a few races. Kyle Busch sponsored by Busch. It's been a match made in heaven that's never, I don't believe, has ever come to fruition. Maybe this could finally become reality next year if Kyle Busch ends up in the 10. I think SHR at this point is a little more likely than Joe Gibbs Racing, but even SHR I don't consider to be like the clear front runner. So I'll go a 6 out of 10. Next, let's talk about some Chevy teams because it sounds like there are at least a couple who've maybe put offers in for Kyle Busch or negotiating with him currently. Let's start with Colleague Racing. I'm going to give Colleague Racing a 6 out of 10 as well. I think they're one of the front runners just because, kind of like Gene Haas at SHR, Matt Colleague owns Leaf Filter. He's got some pretty deep pockets. We've seen his Leaf Filter brand sponsor Justin Haley for the majority of races this year. Could he be willing to make a major splash and go with an A-list driver like Kyle Busch? I mean, earlier this year, Matt Colleague did say that they're considering putting just one driver in that 16 car next year to run for, the championship full season points. Could Kyle Busch be that guy? I don't think enough people are talking about Colleague right now. I know Matt Colleague and Chris Rice told, I believe, The Athletic a few weeks ago that they hadn't talked to Kyle Busch, but that was a few weeks ago. We've now heard in the last 2 weeks that now 2 different Chevy teams are talking to him. I believe Colleague is one of them. At least I'd be shocked if they weren't. Let's throw out some other Chevy teams. Trackhouse. You can never rule Trackhouse out. I don't think they're one of the favorites. I'm going to put Trackhouse at a 3 out of 10 for the time being. You can't count out Justin Marks and Ty Norris. Nobody saw them buying out Chip Ganassi a year ago. For Trackhouse and Kyle Busch to work, they'd need a third charter. Chastain, I believe, is under contract for next year. Daniel Suarez is close to signing an extension, it sounds like. They'll need a third charter. And charters are going for $20 million, or at least that's the asking price according to Adam Stern from Sports Business Journal. I'm not going to doubt Justin Marks, but that's a major investment coming at the heels of several other major investments they've made recently. I don't know. I don't see it happening, but I'm not going to count them out. Never count out Trackhouse, the most interesting, and this year I think the most impressive team in the NASCAR Cup Series. I'll talk about some other lesser likely Chevy options in my opinion. RCR, Richard Childress Racing. I'm going to put them at a 2 out of 10. I just think Richard Childress is too stubborn. I don't think he's willing to spend the kind of money needed to sign Kyle Busch. I don't see him kicking Tyler Reddick out a year early to put Kyle Busch in the 8. Can you imagine Kyle Busch in the 8? Driving for Richard Childress himself. I just can't see it, but who knows? We talked about earlier this week, Richard Childress is still furious with how Tyler Reddick chose to leave his team to go to Toyota. Maybe RCR is seeking some sort of revenge. Oh, Toyota took my top guy. I'll take Toyota's top guy. I don't think there's any way that happens. Kyle Busch and Richard Childress, to me, just do not mix. So I'm going to rule that one out for the time being. One very interesting theory I see a lot of fans tossing around in recent days and weeks. Hendrick Motorsports. Hendrick currently has their 4 drivers under contract for next season. Elliott and Byron signed extensions recently. Kyle Larson and Alex Bowman are both currently signed through 2023. Bowman has Ally sponsorship. Larson presumably has HendrickCars.com. But I've seen a lot of fans talk about Alex Bowman, a driver who maybe has struggled a little this year. He won that race early this year at Las Vegas, but he only has 3 top 5s on the season, and his average finish of almost 16th place is his worst average finish since 2018. Because that 48 car is funded next year full-time with Ally sponsorship, some are speculating Hendrick could buy out Bowman a year early and put Kyle Busch in that seat. I'm going to give this... I'll give it a 2 out of 10. I was going to give it a 1, but I appreciate and respect the creativity and the boldness of those who are pushing this theory. I just don't see this happening. Not with Ally. Ally and Kyle Busch, to me, do not match up very nicely. Like, think about Ally. They've worked with Jimmy Johnson, like the most family-friendly driver personality in the NASCAR Cup Series. Now Alex Bowman. Reserved, not controversial, nothing like that. I cannot imagine Ally jumping over to Kyle Busch or signing off on that deal, especially considering Bowman still won a race this year, still going to be in the playoffs. If Bowman was just performing terribly, no wins, lagging way behind his Hendrick teammates, then maybe they'd consider it, but I don't think there's any chance they do. I think Ally really likes Alex Bowman. I think they're committed to him through at least next year, so I don't think there's any chance Kyle Busch finds a place at Hendrick Motorsports. It would be an interesting reunion after their split way back in 2007. Time heals all wounds. I don't think that's what would hold this up. I just think sponsorship and then, the fact that Bowman has a contract. They would have to break that contract, as far as I know, to make this happen, and I don't think Hendrick's going to jump through that kind of hoop. One more Chevy team I want to mention, and this one I am going to give a 1 out of 10. Junior Motorsports is not signing Kyle Busch and going Cup racing next year. I don't think there's any chance. Yes, Dale Jr. is one of the handful of high-profile team owners who are actively seeking a charter, but $20 million. Anytime Dale Jr. brings up on his podcast or on Twitter the price of charters, you can see the pain in his eyes. I think he's far too reluctant to make that kind of plunge. Now, if Kyle Busch was able to bring a major $10-20 million sponsor with them, then yeah, sure, Dale Earnhardt Jr. would consider paying that asking price and bringing Kyle Busch in. But if Kyle Busch had $20 million of sponsorship, this conversation wouldn't be happening at all. I don't think Junior Motorsports is signing Kyle Busch to go Cup racing. I mentioned Busch in the 8. Can you imagine Kyle Busch in the 88? I am highly, highly skeptical, but that's a fun rumor. That's fun to speculate on. I just don't think it happens. Last team I want to talk about, and this is a Toyota team. Toyota, I think, still has an opportunity here. Let's talk about 2311 Racing. What does the future of the 45 car look like? Look, in 2024, it's probably Tyler Reddick's, unless they land a third charter between now and then, which is possible. Next year, the seat is Kurt Busch's, as long as he wants it. With this recent head injury, and Kurt Busch being one of the older drivers in the Cup Series, a guy who's already won a championship, he's already won the Daytona 500, could Kurt Busch decide 2022 is it? Even if he comes back and finishes out these playoffs and contends for a title this year, he may look at the health concerns. Once you have one head injury, it's often easier to sustain more and more. He may just decide to step away from full-time racing after this year, which means 2311 will need someone for that 45 seat. They could try to buy out Reddick a year early. Maybe Richard Childress just gives him to him because he's mad about Reddick leaving. Maybe they get Reddick a year early, but maybe they get Kyle Busch. Maybe he goes from one Toyota destination to another. KBM stays a Toyota development team. Maybe this leads to a larger role going forward for Kyle Busch at Toyota. Maybe he just becomes a 2311 driver for the long-term future. Ty Gibbs can race for his grandfather's team. Maybe this is a win-win for Toyota if it works out. There are a lot of ifs in this whole scenario, though. I'll give 2311, though, as good of odds as I gave Joe Gibbs Racing. Not great, but I'll give him a 4 out of 10. I might even go as high as like a 4.5. Yeah, I'll say 4.5. I think it's slightly more likely Busch ends up in a 2311 car than a Joe Gibbs Racing car, which is kind of crazy to say. So let's recap. I guess I gave Stewart-Haas a 6 out of 10 and Colleague a 6 out of 10. So I guess those are the front runners. That's what I mean. There's no clear frontrunner at this point. I think there are a couple that maybe are edging ahead of others. I think Joe Gibbs Racing is falling behind with every week that passes, but there's no clear frontrunner, which is why this ongoing story is extraordinarily interesting. Kyle Busch will have a job next year, but I don't think it's with Joe Gibbs Racing, and I'm not sure who the favorite to land him is just yet. But share your thoughts down in the comment section below. What team do you think has the best chance of landing Kyle Busch? I look forward to hearing your responses. We'll probably get new information next week that completely changes all the scores on my list here. Hope you guys had fun with this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. We talk NASCAR news almost every single day. And as always, a big thank you to my Patreon supporters. I truly appreciate your support each and every month. I greatly appreciate it. Truly cannot say thank you enough for all the support you guys have been giving me on Patreon, on this channel, on live streams, and so much more. It's been remarkable, to say the least. I am truly thankful for all of you guys supporting the channel. Thanks for watching this one, y'all. I will see you in the next video.